He would chicken scratch on a napkin and come up with a price and know how it felt and what that job should be because he'd done it forever. And I wanted to have a spreadsheet where you plugged everything in and we were job costing everything. And he was more interested in getting the job done faster and then seeing whether they made money at the end of the year. And he was good at that. But we just had different mentalities on running a company. My dad had come in from having a master's degree in college. He had a little bit more of a business picture and business education than what my grandfather did, but he had to struggle and had to grind to get the business off the ground. He had to do every single job in the company. And when I came in, it was more of a size and scale that it was about developing the business instead of developing a job. They say the difference between an employee and a small business owner is the small business owner owns his job and the employee works for somebody. The difference between the big business owner and a small business owner is the big business owner owns a system and the small business owner owns a job.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. My name's Jamie Gruber, host of the Tribe of Millionaires podcast with my co-host, Grant Warrington. Say hi, Grant.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm excited for this one. Aaron, heard a lot about you, buddy. Can't wait to hear more.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. So real quick reminder, subscribe, like, comment. It helps us grow the podcast. And if you're interested in joining GoBundance at any level, just go to GoBundance.com, submit your application, and we've got the community for you. So Aaron Katerberg is my guest. He is a GoBundance member. He is a GoBundance champion. He's a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, an investor, and he's got pretty cool lifestyle stories that I think we're going to get into today. So Aaron, man, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Jamie. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. I'm excited to get into this. So let's start with a little bit of backstory. We got three Michigan guys on the screen here, kind of. I'm like sort of Michigan guy right now, but three Michigan guys on the screen here. But what's your backstory? Where are you from? What do you do? All of that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm from the good side of the state, over Grand Rapids.
We agree. Actually, we agree with that. Yeah,
right. Yeah, most of the Detroit guys usually do. Yeah. So I grew up here. I'm actually fourth generation here in Grand Rapids. My great grandparents on both sides moved over here from the Netherlands a long, long time ago, and our family's been very connected and intertwined with the community here. I'm a third generation entrepreneur in the same industry. So that's some of my quick backstory as far as business. I always swore I was never going into the family business. And so went away to college and in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, God's country up there, and studied political science, which I don't know what you do for a living with that really, but and then went on to graduate school for a while and worked on a master's in divinity out in British Columbia, Canada. And then my wife finally decided after chasing her for like 7 years that she would put up with me. And so we moved back here and moved back around family. And I got drawn back into the family business. And kind of the rest is history. But my grand and my dad were both very much S's. That they ran small business. They were the guy that you describe all the time, who are the true entrepreneurs at heart.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I was that. I've tried to develop the business more as a B. I've fallen in love with real estate investing and side projects and squirrels, and tend to chase those more than I chase the day-to-day grind and worrying about how to put pipes together sometimes.
Wow. Well, there's something you threw in there that I want to start with. Master's in divinity. What exactly is that, and what was your intention with that?
Yeah. So what that is that's what a lot of pastors in an evangelical background get, and so that's a 3-year degree, and I, like many entrepreneurs, am very ADD, and I'm kind of a sucky student. I was always smart enough to get by, but I never could sit down and focus on the homework and get stuff done. And so when I got to grad school, it was all about jumping hoops. And there's some interesting stories behind that too out there and some of the stuff that happened. But I got really humbled as far as my academic abilities when I was out there, and it was like, I finished about 1.5 years of it, and it's like, this is not where I'm called to be. So had to figure some of that stuff out. So I was a youth pastor when I was out there. I had worked with kids a bunch and given back in our church, both here in Grand Rapids and in the Upper Peninsula, and really felt like that's where I was called to go. And realized that I'm more gifted as an entrepreneur than I am as a preacher.
Gotcha. So you're not divine then?
No, I'm not divine. No, certainly not.
But in 18 more months, you would have been.
Yeah, I still don't think I would have been divine. I would have maybe understood divinity better. How about that?
Gotcha. Okay. Understood. Yeah. I credit you for even getting the bachelor's. Like, I didn't make it that far. I don't think you did either, Grant. Right. So like, I credit you with the bachelor's degree. So you're go ahead.
Yeah, really, you should credit that to me being an athlete. I was on tennis scholarship, and nice. and coaches and people watched over me to make sure that I did enough to get by. And so that got me through undergraduate, because I was not a good student.
That makes sense. That's all high school was for me. Like, as long as I could play sports, I'd go to school. So yeah, but I didn't have the athletic prowess to get a scholarship. As much as I know people are surprised by that.
What sports did you play? Hang on, we got to dive into this.
I played soccer. I played 1 week of football before it really hurt, and then I stopped.
Okay.
And then I played basketball, which my stature is pretty obvious with that. Wow. And then actually in the spring, I wouldn't do sports anyway. I wouldn't do baseball. I would do the play, because I'm a creative.
There you go.
It was for the girls.
I'd like to say that's the case, but I was so awkward with girls. Still am. But I actually enjoyed the entertainment value of that. I guess that's why I'm out here like, look at me with the podcast and all that shit. So yeah, it's just sort of part and parcel of who I am.
Nice.
All right. So you mentioned the family business. What is the family business? What's the industry you're in? You can, the name of it, whatever you want to mention there. Just kind of give us some background on that.
Yeah, it's Grapids Irrigation is our company. Was Katerberg lawn sprinkling a long, long time ago when my grandpa was in it. My grandpa actually had 4 sons, and all of them were smart enough to get away from it and went other directions, including my dad. And my dad had gotten a master's degree in physical education, was running an athletic department in university, and then came back to Grand Rapids after being in Youngstown, Ohio, and started an athletic club, a tennis club. And so he ran that, and as a minority partner, he was the operating partner until I was about 12. And his partner keeled over on the golf course, the one who owned a majority. There were 2 brothers left in. And all of a sudden he was out on the street with no job and no payoff, and had to figure out what to do. So he had a guy throw him the keys to one of his service trucks from an HVAC company and says, "You know how to dig holes, get out there and start a sprinkling business again." And so he went back in 1986, and I started digging holes instead of swinging a tennis racket, or besides swinging a tennis racket, I guess. And the rest is kind of history from there.
What made you want to not go into the business afterward? Was it just the path toward, being a pastor? You felt a draw there, or was there something you didn't like about the business when you decided not to go pursue it?
I've been thinking about that one a bit lately, actually. A book that I've been listening to and reading and thinking about is The Wealthy Gardener. And like you kind of talk about the plays and who you are. And you've been talking a lot about becoming a middle-aged entrepreneur, and that really ringing a bell with you. Sprinkling never rang a bell with me. Impacting people, impacting kids, working in the world that way. Just, you see what your dad does. My dad and my grandpa would both come home from running crews all day, selling all day, chasing people, work 12 hours days, and then bill for 3 or 4 hours at night. I just don't tell anyone, but I don't have a passion necessarily for green grass. And that's what we do, is make grass green, beautify our community. And I've learned to build into that and figure out how to add value and how to apply it to my own heart and passions. But as far as getting into that business, I didn't have a draw to that. It was kind of like your story in insurance, but from a very different angle. But the great part of being an entrepreneur is you're in control of it. So I was able to shift that and change that into other things as my heart was drawn different places, as my leading was drawn different places, as my passions were inspired with different things.
Can you talk? This is interesting to me. I'd like to talk about this for a second, because I think, like my whole thing is quitting the job, right? And I think quitting the job is the sexy packaging on find fulfillment, right? Like do something that fulfills you. Mm-hmm. For a lot of people, quitting the job or getting out of the business or whatever is very scary, but there's an opportunity, like take a demotion with your current employer, or laterally move to another role that serves you. Or in your case, I guess in a way, like pivot not the values, but like the mission, or, how you want to take the company to be more aligned with you. Can you talk about that? Like, I mean, there's so many questions within it about how did you get permission to all of that stuff? But can you just sort of start there, and we'll dig in on this a little bit, because I think this is a key point for me, at least. And I know for a lot of people that might be listening.
Yeah. So as you talk about values, and you didn't quite want to go there, but I'll go there a little bit. And over time, I've had to struggle and figure out, we started Traction, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago now as a company. And I realized I need to have my own core values defined. And that exercise has made me realize why the company has drawn me the way that it has, and why it has worked with me, and what's important to me. And so I went, my first one is serving Jesus Christ. My second one is my family. My third one is seeing others. My fourth one is varied experiences. And the fifth one is life is a process, not a product. And I didn't come to those quickly. And I wrote out a whole bunch of things, did the whole kill, keep, combine exercise from EOS, which a lot of people who listen to this are probably a little bit familiar with, at least. And realized that when I came into the business, I had sworn I wasn't going to. I came back from graduate school, and before I married my wife, I was spending a little bit of time working in the company, and was figuring out what that meant just to pay the bills, getting out of college. And so I went, I'm not going to do this. And then, so I went and worked for another company, left and just was butting heads, hated how my dad ran things because he had his hands in everything. And we were butting heads, and I'd go, you could scale this, you could change this, blah, 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 blah. And so he had both of his managers. He was very lineal vertical, right? He ran everything. And both of his managers, his construction manager and his service manager, quit a couple weeks before the spring started. In spring in Michigan, we're a 7-month season for an irrigation business, which adds a really weird, interesting dynamic. And so he was basically caught with, I have to run a company, I don't have anybody to do it with. And so he begged me to come back. And at that point, we both kind of realized that I had more of a gifting for working with people and developing processes and vision, as well as with the numbers of the business. And in that role, I was much better than I was. Not that I wasn't a capable service technician or installer, but I had much more of a passion for being an entrepreneur and a business owner than I ever did for being a sprinkler guy. I had a second cousin who's also in this industry, and we were out shooting with our regional wholesale manager. And the way he introduced me, he said, I'm a sprinkler guy who happens to be in business. Aaron is a business guy who happens to be in sprinkling. And I thought that really hit home with me.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Wow, man, that takes me in 25 different directions. One thing as an aside, when you left your father, when you left the business, I mean, was that a separation with your dad for a while, or did he understand? I mean, a controlling linear guy, like how was that for you?
So that was a struggle, more business wise and work relationship than personal. My dad is probably my greatest mentor. I love my dad. We don't think alike. And we butted heads hard. We're both firstborns. and really struggled along those lines when I came into the company. I think that relationship got worse. I know that relationship got worse. And we had a 20-year buyout. First 10 years, he had control. After that, I hit over 50%. I took 100% control, and then it was just a loan to pay him off. And so in that process time of those first 10 years, it just got worse and worse and worse that I went, hey, we should do this. And he would go, no. And he would go, all right, try that. That doesn't work. And the more I changed things, the more I got into his backyard of what he was really good at and passionate about. And so even the way that he bid, he would do it, he would say, as much by gut as by science. And so he would chicken scratch on a napkin and come up with a price and know how it felt from 5 years ago and what that job should be, because he'd done it forever. Or he was using a bid sheet from my grandpa from the 60s, and I wanted to have a spreadsheet where you plugged everything in and we were job costing everything. And he was more interested in getting the job done faster and then seeing whether they made money at the end of the year. And he was good at that. But we just had different mentalities on running a company.
Yeah. Well, you said you're a businessman in sprinklers. Your dad sounds like he was a sprinkler guy that was running a business as well, correct?
You're correct. And he was probably less that way than my grandfather, who had a 6th grade education. Sure. And he had gone into the business coming out of plumbing and HVAC. And my dad had come in from having a master's degree in college and learning systems for running things in a university and working with administration. And so he had a little bit more of a business picture and business education than what my grandfather did, but he was still, he had to struggle and had to grind to get the business off the ground. He had to do every single job in the company. And when I came in, it was more of a size and scale that it was about developing the business instead of developing a job. They say the difference between an employee and a small business owner is the small business owner owns his job and the employee works for somebody. The difference between the big business owner and a small business owner is the big business owner owns a system and the small business owner owns a job. So
I like that a lot. So 7 years ago, you implemented traction, and this is where you defined these values that you talked about, correct?
Yes.
But prior to that, so if I'm getting the timeline right, was it 20 years or no, 10 years of your dad having control before you then had control? So is it about 3 years into your time as the sole sort of controlling entity? Is that when you implemented traction?
Yeah, 3 or 4, I think, because I've been bought out now for a little while.
Tell me about that decision. Like, so was the decision to do, I'm really curious about the path here, because, you entered a business that isn't necessarily, a business that you have passion for. It is business that you have passion for, but not this particular type of business, this particular type of entity. Was implementing traction like, was that a pivot point for you? Like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I need a better system. Was that a revelation for you? Or did you trip into, if I own the system as a big business owner, I can create the system and I own a system. I'm curious if it was a saving grace for you or if it was just kind of on the path of progress for you.
Both. I think both. So when we did it, I'd been at this and had to grind and didn't love being a small business owner. And I read Traction, was recommended by someone in our industry to read that, and it hit home. I couldn't set it down. But the one that I think impacted me even more was the book Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, where he talks about the visionary integrator relationship. And I realized I'm a sucky integrator. Like, I have all these big ideas and I take things and explode them, and then I run off to the next thing. And then I do that again. And then I don't settle things down. And then 5 years later, I'll go, well, I told you to do this. And we started doing this 5 years ago. Why aren't we doing this well? And I went, I need somebody alongside me who's this guy who grinds and makes systems and makes processes go. And I need my team to be on the same board, because they were referring to me as the hurricane, or the swirling vortex, or other things, because I'd be chasing anything and everything out there that was the next interesting, crazy idea, whether it was in the company or out of the company.
Oh man.
And so leveling it out and going that way. I also started, a peer group of guys from my industry that we took about 10 guys who were the top guys in the industry from around the northern part of the country, and starting to talk with them. And it just gave me more and more ideas of things we can incorporate and change. And then I had all my own things going, and it just got messier and messier without me working in a system.
Wow. Did you develop an integrator, or did you have to hire an integrator?
Both. So we hired someone, and it was interesting. I hired or paid for a company to review him after I'd met with him from someone from EO, not EOS, but the Entrepreneurs Organization, had recommended him to me, and I liked him. He was a good guy, but I was really hesitant. I mean, it's hard to give your baby up, right? To give your family's baby up for a long, long time. And so he came on with us, but then he was more of a third man than a second man, or someone who was used to running the whole company. And so it's taken time for him to really take that lead role and drive with it.
What was missing? What was the separation between him being a second man and a third man?
Yeah, so a lot of times great. Well, the old line, and my wife absolutely hates this one. She's an educator, but is A students work for B students who work in company that's owned by C students.
Yeah, so true.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's a reason for that, because A students are spectacular at what they do, right? They're able to follow direction. They're able to follow the rules. They're able to work through things. But then B students are a little bit sloppier and don't care as much about perfection. So they're able to be managers, but to think outside the box, to be visionaries, to be people who are able to try and do different things and jump on things and are ADD enough to handle all the different facets of a business, it's hard. So my integrator, he was someone who was more along that A-, B+ lines.
Got it.
And to have to swivel into a whole bunch of different areas when he was really good at sales, but then he has to watch the finance, and he has to learn the operations, and it was a lot for him. I mean, it was a major to throw at someone, this medium-sized company that's technically oriented, that's going a whole bunch of different directions, with someone who's the swirling vortex in front of it, and then say, hey, clean this up and make it neat and make it work better.
Wow.
Is he still there today?
He is. Yeah.
Oh, nice. How did that, so you decided that you're going to give him some time, let him develop into that role, or?
Yeah. So one thing that, one of my, again, lines that I picked up over the years is my training process is, number one, I do it and you watch. Number two, I do it and you help. So first year was kind of, I did it and he watched.
Okay.
And he helped some, but second year was kind of, I did it and he helped. Third year, he did it, I helped. By the fourth year, it was supposed to be, he did it, I did something else. And so we're still working on getting to that point, but that's more and more the idea is I'm supposed to be doing something else and staying out of the way. They remind me that I'm not supposed to have day-to-day responsibilities, that I'm not supposed to do things, which is super hard when you've grown up in this business and you care which shovel they use. And so giving some of that up is hard, and I don't always do a great job of it, but he's gotten better and better about taking hold of that, as well as the team around him has learned that it's really their responsibility to own the operations or the finance piece or the customer service or the sales piece.
Wow. Do you, I love that the phrase that came to mind is, what is it? I do, we do, they do, right? Isn't that that I've heard that maybe David Osborne coined that or said that, but that's what you just went through, right? Like I do it, watch me, we'll do it together. So, you help me and then you do it and I'll kind of observe you. What are you supposed to be doing that they're telling you should be doing something else? Where are you supposed to be, or what should you be doing? Yeah.
So my title is the visionary.
That's the title? Like that's on your business card almost?
Oh, yeah, that's my business card title. CEO Visionary, that's one of those terms. I prefer the visionary title, right? So I'm supposed to set the big picture of where we're going in 10 years, in 3 years. I have a hard time getting down below 1 year, and I throw stuff at them that makes everybody in the room cringe and shake their head.
What do you mean? Like what? What do you mean by that?
Oh, like we took over another company, and over the years I've taken over a bunch of smaller irrigation companies. And the one that we took over a year ago had a holiday lighting division, and they were a small company with only 2 people, 3 people, I guess. And so we kind of took it over, and my team ran it and learned from them, and they kind of ran it with them and showed them what they do. And I went, I don't like that. We're not going to do that. So they did mainly greens, where you got to order all the live stuff and put stuff together. And it's high hands-on, high maintenance, high contact. And I said, hey, we could put this into a bulk system, and I think we can sell 6 times this year what we did last year. And they all went, oh crap. But I don't get to run that, right? I throw out the ideas and the concept and the vision, and then our integrator, he tames that and goes, okay, I get what he's talking about, what he's seeing can happen, but maybe this is our 3-year plan, not in the next 3 months.
Interesting. As the visionary, what is the do in any of this? Is there any do for you?
So when we had an implementer, so the implementer is the guy you hire outside. The integrator is the guy inside who's your general manager. The implementer is your consultant. And we had an implementer when we first started with it. And I'm always reminded at those conferences, the old Henry Ford line, to take it from the Detroit guys, that the hardest work is thinking. And so I'm supposed to be thinking and looking at what's possible a lot of times. I'm also told by my integrator regularly that I'm supposed to be grandpa. So I'm supposed to be patting people on the shoulder and encouraging them in what they're doing and reminding them that of how much we impact our community and the reason for this, because it's still my baby. It's still my family's name on this. It's still my community that we're trying to help and impact. And really, I mean, you heard my core values. I'm not in this business anymore, Jamie, to make a bunch of money. And my grandpa and my dad would both say before I got in, or early on, that you don't get rich doing sprinkling, you make a living. And I've discovered that's true. Like I've always done okay, but I'm here to help our community and to help people. That's more my core value than having a big bankroll. And I feel like if we help people, that's really the win. So.
Yeah.
Aaron, I got to ask, how do you, if you have the vision, right? Because this is what would probably really piss me off. And I say, okay, we're going to go in this direction in the next year, right? And then the integrator says, whoa, let's slow that down. Let's do that in 3 years. Like, wouldn't you be thinking like, no, bullshit, let's get this thing done in 1 year? Like, how do you know that you need to just say, okay, I'm going to take a step back and let the process go?
Welcome to our fights, Grant. Yeah. So we have a same page meeting once a month.
Okay.
And that's when I get to step on him. So I say, hey, I still sign your check. You need to step up. We can't go from, I just threw out that we're going to sell an extra $1 million and you now have turned it to 15,000. This is not reasonable. We need to settle someplace in between.
Because it almost seemed like maybe they could just, be lackadaisy about it and be like, oh, and try to almost a cop out, right? So you're there to push, right?
Yep. So they stay safe. They keep the systems. They organize the mess. I'm the one who makes the mess. I'm the one who is the entrepreneur who's chasing the next thing. I'm the one who's doing big relationship things. Who I'm out meeting with EO or involved in GoBundance or doing things along that line.
Because I always, when I hear that, and I've heard this before, about how the EOS operates and all that, and I always think it's some big rosy back and forth with the company, but it's nice to hear it's not. That's not what happens.
It's go in a private room and punch each other so people don't see you.
Okay, that's good to know.
What a massive. So Grant just said it's nice to hear that you don't have synergy. That's great, Grant. That's
because that's what would piss me off. I'd be the same way, going, hey, I'm here to push. And then I would think that the other people are like, oh, well, why don't we just slow down? And that would piss me off. So
I remember from marriage counseling class a long time ago, Masters in Divinity back, and they said, if two people agree on everything, one of them's not necessary. And I think the same thing with the visionary integrator relationship.
Wow.
That could be a podcast title for this episode. Holy cow. Yeah. That's amazing. I love that. That's a great point. If two people are in agreement, then one of them is not necessary. That's awesome. That's a great way of looking, because, I think a lot of leaders want their way, right? Like, you agree with me. That's the W-2 world. That's probably one of the things I didn't like about it was comply with my wishes. Not let's talk about what capabilities there are and fill in and give me context and let's agree on something that makes sense, but comply. And I love that. If you're in agreement, then one of you is not necessary. That's a great point.
A students work for B students who work in companies owned by C students. It's the same thing again, right? The C student would never comply, would never do it. It's the A students who make the spectacular employees.
I'm so glad I was a C student now. That's awesome. As a C to D student. D students must be like Elon Musk.
Diploma. Yep.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the stuff that I know you've done, the adventure, the kind of where lifestyle is going for you and all of that. But one thing I kind of jotted down as we were talking through it, I don't know, maybe this was like, well, duh for you. But in your values, you started with Jesus, then family. Talk to me about that. I'm curious. Like, I don't have a judgment on it, but as a guy that I'm spiritual, not religious, they say, right? Like, I believe in a higher power. I live my life in that way, but the religion part of it has always been something that's bothered me. So when listening to Jesus first, then family, for me, I feel like I would have gone the other way. Like, my family, my faith. Talk to me about the decision. Was it a decision, or was it just sort of a natural inclination?
No, decision. So when you say you're spiritual but not religious,
such a cliche.
I'm not religious. I'm relational. I truly believe that there's a piece with Jesus Christ that if He's in your life, and the Holy Spirit moves into your heart, they talk about accepting Jesus. And you guys have heard the thing, I'm sure, a bunch of times, but it really changes who you are when you turn that foundation over to looking for something bigger and higher than you are. And by looking for Jesus in my life, it makes my family better. It makes my ability to impact others. And so if I'm running my decision-making filter and I've got to decide whether to give up my family or to give up my core value number one, I'm going to give up my family. And that's super hard for me to say. I love my family. I have three amazing boys. My wife and I have been married for 23 years. You hear how connected I am with family, 4 generations living around me and spread out. It's not that that's not important, but my connection with Jesus Christ and Him saving me from all the stupid things that I've done, and we could get into that. I've done lots of stupid things and made lots of mistakes, and I'm selfish at the core, but changing who I am from the inside out is much, much bigger than anything else in my life.
Being authentic to you first. That, I think, is the difference. Again, I being a midlife entrepreneur, as you mentioned a moment ago, I really do observe entrepreneurship. I've had the opportunity to meet with you. We're familiar with like Ryan Murdock, Brandon Turner, people like that. Osborne, some of the other guys in GoBundance, Grant even, right? Like guys that I'm around all the time. Like, you observe the tendencies of entrepreneurs. And a lot of it for me is, can I define myself as, like, I see what you've done and even just the values you laid out. And it's like, shit, that's an entrepreneur, right? Like, I'm not an entrepreneur. So I look for those things that I relate to. And I've used the word defiance. I see inner defiance in every good entrepreneur that I know, right? They just know, not that way. It's going to go like, it's got to be this way. Just zig when they're zagging. So I relate to that. What you just talked about is what I think is the next level and probably aspirational for me, which is 100% commitment to you, who you are and your authenticity without compromise, even family, even the thing that we are taught or are told is number one, family, right? But you've made that decision that you and being true to you is number one. And I hope you never have to make the decision, obviously, between family and your faith. But man, that resonates with me. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So ironically, Jamie, and when I was in the school up in the UP, the church that I went to had something on the wall that said joy, and it was written vertically. So it was JOY down the wall. Yep. And it was Jesus, others, you. And so I think that's the model that Christ laid out, is your life is better the more that you put one, a greater power and a greater purpose behind your life. Two, that you put other people and impacting the world ahead of your own life. And then third, you put yourself. So my family lands in that, at the top of that other section. And then my own best really comes from passing over my own needs and wants and looking towards something bigger. Sin, back to, man, I can't believe how much I'm getting back to working on a master's in divinity. But one thing I read one time is that sin is defined as selfishness. And so whenever you're putting yourself in front of things, I mean, the Bible talks about sin and they never define that very well, but your life is so much better if you get away from me, I, me, my, I think are the most selfish, sinful words in the dictionary. And you start going bigger. And really, I think that's when you talk to tons of entrepreneurs, when they start looking at things, when they start seeing that they really want to give back, they start going, man, my bigger house doesn't really matter. My business doing $100 million doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It's these relationships that I have, how I'm impacting the world, that has a much bigger piece of my heart and my world than the dollars. I mean, you can have as many storage containers as you want, but it doesn't make you happy.
Mm-hmm. I love it, man. Sin, by the way, selfishness. They gotta at that place that you went to, the divinity school there, they got to make an acronym with that, because the S in sin and selfishness, like selfishness is nuts or something, right? Like
there you go.
Next to joy.
Oh boy.
Yep.
I'm helping. Grant,
I like it. I like it.
Right? Others. Yeah. Grant, what we just learned from Aaron. I'm helping others.
Yes. Aaron, what's back to the show? How is your relationship with your dad right now? I wanted to ask you that.
I think spectacular at this point. He and I are going up with my boys. We're going riding side by sides. Once we got out of in the UP up on Drummond Island, but once we got out of that business relationship, that we were a couple of type A's. And once I matured and started becoming an idiot, our relationship got better and better. I think 17 to 30 especially, I was figuring out who I was, trying to define that, kind of fighting with those things, trying to find my purpose. And so my dad he does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. People always ask me what he's doing. And so he comes into the company and he still loves working. So he tests backflows for us, or he runs errands for my people, or he helps me with anything. I mean, he's really just got a heart to pitch in to help people be better. And I really appreciate more the things that I used to fight against all the time, the ability to grind and be able to stay after it and to just move the cart down the road. And I'm not as good at that. I mean, so he thinks I'm crazy the way that I run the business and the way that I operate in life. But at the same time, he now has appreciation for it instead of a conflict with it.
Got it.
What you mentioned failures a moment ago. Is there one that taught you the biggest lesson? Is there a failure that stands out when you think about things that have gone in any area, business, life, relationships, whatever it is? Like, is there one that jumps out and any lessons you extracted from that?
Yeah. So another good book, but probably it's not my seminary appropriate book, is WTF which is willing to fail. And I think for me, I've realized that failure is okay. When I went through school, and I think especially I talk about that time again, floating back to seminary, but at that time in life, I loaded up the back end of my pickup truck with everything I owned. I got accepted like the week before. Drove across the country with a buddy, dropped him off in Seattle. He paid for his bus ticket back, and I slept in the back 40 at the seminary when I arrived. And I got to class and not having a shower for the last about a week. And it was all guys who were like in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, who are going back to school to become pastors at pretty traditional churches. And I went, oh, yeah, I am out of my comfort zone. And then we started going through classes and studying Hebrew and working on Old Testament theology and a bunch of those pieces. And I went, ooh, I'm really out of my element, and got some really good mentors there. I restored an old Studebaker with the pastor that I lived with, who was the head of the Evangelical Free Church of Canada. And I was really good at that. I ended up doing construction and building a gym down in Ferndale, Washington for another boss. I was the assistant manager at an athletic club across the border at that time, and just became real obvious that this wasn't my calling. But I really went, I am over my head. I am broken. I don't have any friends out here. I don't have any family. I don't have any support system. And it was a time for me that was very, very humbling. I felt like that was the first time that I really toppled and failed. And I didn't get why, because honestly, I felt like I was following what the Lord wanted in my life. And looking back at it, I was. But what he wanted was to humble and to teach me. And so I look at a lot of those failures now as opportunities for growth instead of areas that I'm falling down in, if that makes sense.
It does completely. I like that. I Googled the book. I see it. WTF, Willing to Fail. I'll have to grab that. I like the title. At a minimum, I got to read it because of the title. So I appreciate that.
That's how he sold most of them, I think.
Yeah. Your wife is Canadian, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Is that how you met, through your travels to Canada? How did you and your wife cross paths?
Yeah, Northern Ontario she's from. So she's from an island out in Lake Huron. And she was homeschooled growing up. And so where I went to school in the UP was right on the border overlooking Canada. And one of my buddies was involved with the Wesleyan church that I was involved with there. And he'd come over and we'd ski and rock climb, and we're always doing something. And then she and her friends started coming over to Bible study that I was leading at church. And so really pretty girl, and went, oh man. And so I had serious interest. And so I started chasing her, and she had come off of a rough relationship and said, I want nothing to do with you. And so we continued to be friends and hang out for a long time after that. But it took over 5 years until she finally agreed that she'd put up with me and be called my girlfriend instead. But kind of her deal was, yeah, if we're going to date, we're going to get married. So it kind of started out that way. So it was interesting.
Wow. Well, it worked out, right? It's been a while. So I guess, yeah. I love it. That's incredible. If we're going to date, we're going to get married. That's a woman who knows what she wants. So good for you. Oh man, a thought came into my head and it popped back out on, adventure. I wanted to get into adventure because I know you've done a lot of traveling. You ran across Ryan Murdock, who, if anybody listens to BiggerPockets or knows of BiggerPockets, Ryan is one of the partners in Open Door Capital with Brandon Turner, and a great dude. I just talked to him this past week about this thing I'm putting together in the Dominican Republic. He really gave me a lot of perspective and thoughts on how to run it, how to organize it, and everything. But Ryan aside, adventure, talk about that. What is that in your life? Like, how much of it do you do? What are some of the bucket list stuff that you have done that you're trying to do? Just kind of give me an overview of, because you spend a lot of time traveling.
Yes. So it's got the crimp on it, obviously. Ryan and I met just before COVID. I was over I'm going to tell that story quick, Jamie. I know that's not exactly this, but so I was over in Malaysia / Indonesia, visiting my brother and sister-in-law who are missionaries over there. and they run a school for kids and for students in Indonesia. So we toured Malaysia, and then my brother-in-law loves diving, and I said, let's go diving then. And where's the best place over in your part of the world? And so he goes, oh, I've always wanted to go to Komodo, but I can't afford it. I'm like, we're going. Let's do this. And so we got it. He got it all scheduled and planned, a liveaboard boat that you go and you dive off this liveaboard for a week, and they serve you local food, and none of the guys speak English. And pretty much our line got to be eat, sleep, dive. But when we arrived there, we were going to be the only two on the boat. And there was another boat down the way that had one American on it. And they said, well, we're going to put him on your boat, and we're going to combine the boats. And the boats are set up for like 10 people. So it made sense. We each had our own room. It was no problem. Sure. And that guy, I walked up and he's wearing a BiggerPockets shirt. BiggerPockets. Wow, that's interesting. I listened to that a bit. And he's like, really? And he's like, yeah, I live with Brandon Turner. And oh, good. And we just hit it off right from the start. And so, I mean, from anything from old Jeeps to he's from Maine to being from Michigan. I mean, so we spent a week laying out in the sun, diving together, just hanging out, and got to be really good friends. And so that's actually how I got connected with GoBundance too. Yeah. Is I said, hey, I'm sick of small business owners, people who own their jobs, and this isn't what I'm looking for in my life. Where do I go, Ryan? Or what? And we're just messaging back and forth or texting. He says, you should check out GoBundance. And so I hooked up with you a couple of years ago, Jamie. But I've gone a lot of other places. I climbed Kilimanjaro, highest peak in Africa. Climbed up Aconcagua, the highest peak in the Western and Southern Hemisphere. A couple of weeks ago, I was over in the Boundary Waters with a bunch of guys, and we were living out of a canoe for a week. I take each of my boys when they become 13 to Isle Royal up in northern Michigan. The least visited but most returned to national park in the United States. All there are on that island are red squirrels, moose, and wolves. So we live out of a canoe for a week and do that. I do a lot of four-wheeling. I like skiing. I don't know. The list goes on and on. So it's whatever squirrel comes up at that point. I mean, I do some mission work. We build houses down in Guatemala. Yeah. I could go off on any of these for a long time. We can do the whole podcast on something here, so don't let me get misdirected. But,
no. It's great. I just think I love how you live. I love the lessons that you have around Jesus, others, you, and how you abide by that and live by that, and you see what your lifestyle is. Again, like I was just talking to people about pods. Somebody was saying about their pod being stale, and I always give this advice to people. It's like, well, the pod is stale for you. My question is, give me the other pod mates in your pod. Like, what's their number one ambition and what do they need from you? And none of them know it. They don't know, right? Like, and it sounds pie in the sky, but in the pod, I believe that when you deliver, when you intend in the pod to go in there to help other people, to be like, okay, I'll get what I get, but I want to know what your ambition is, Aaron, and where you need a support, accountability, connection, whatever it is I can give you. That's where you derive value, right? And it's exactly how you live your life. And you're one of those examples I can use of saying, if you live this way, then you live this way, right? Like if you live this way of putting, others first and yourself kind of, giving and contributing, look at the life you can have. It's incredible what you've created for yourself. I love it. What has GoBundance done for you or been for you? Or what's the most value you've gotten from GoBundance as being a member? I know you're fairly new, but you've been around it a little bit.
Yeah. So I think like with any organization like that you go to, it's the people around you, right? So I was in the Lake Oconee in Georgia here a week or two ago, and sitting down and meeting some of the guys from my GoPod the first time, as well as meeting other people and connecting with people from the event that I went to in Steamboat a couple years ago. The people there are not your normal box. When you sit down with the GoBundance people, and I think especially the Champions Group is that much worse or better that way. They're a little bit crazier. They have tried some things. And for me, I think it keeps that fire in my belly a little bit to chase the next thing, right? I came home with more notes out of the last GoBundance event than I've got from any conference, and we met for like 3 hours, right? So listen to other people's one sheets, having them tell about their bucket list adventures, and I'm like, I'm coming. So whatever it is, has been really inspiring for me, or things even in their life or business that they want to do with their money, or that I've been able to grab onto some of those things and go, I should be applying that to my life. And I don't get that when I go and hang out with a bunch of guys that I went to high school with, or employees from my business, or even other local business owners. GoBundance has just been one step beyond that way.
Love it, man. Well, what is next? You mentioned you've got all these ideas where you want to go. Like, what's Aaron 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever version's coming?
Yeah, when people ask that, my first question is always, what category?
Yeah, good point.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Let's go with it. Let's do business. What is next in business for you?
So fun one that I keep kidding about just because it's a fun conversation. I've mentioned to you a couple times, Jamie, is I bought a prison here recently from the state. And so I've gotten into self-storage lately, but I don't think I've done it quite as traditionally as most people do it. Buying a prison is not a traditional self-storage facility. I had a buddy who had it, and we've gotten into that. I just had a meeting this morning that we bought a couple big warehouses out on the lake in Muskegon. That we're converting, and I've got a business partner in that who's kind of an e-commerce specialist, and he's running with that. So business-wise, I'm chasing that. I bought one with a couple GoBros who asked me to partner, and they said, you can be an equal partner. We're buying this one, and I said, it's way too, as the one guy called it, vanilla for me. This is too boring. And so they bought it, and I bought in at 10% and put my money down just to learn the game a little bit, to be able to play the game, to be able to study. And that's been some of the big piece from GoBundance too, is just being with people who are trying things and you can check things out from and learn from. So for me, another big one is I've got some patents running. And I'm not going to, you asked what's off limits earlier. That one's maybe a little bit off limits because I need some non-disclosure agreements, but I've got a prototype built by an engineering company that I've been working with for about the last 6 months. And it's really complicated piece and way over my head. I don't even know which direction to go with this thing because I don't know anybody who's done anything like this or done something of this scale or level. So that's one of the next things in business wise, as far as the underground sprinkling business. We've got 3-year, 10-year plans laid out. They're continuing to grind. We're trying to fill in our winter doing the holiday lighting. We're continuing to build what we're regularly doing. We're doing some landscape lighting. But that's not at an Aaron crazy level. That's at our integrator managed level. So there's less in business there. I keep getting asked to be in service businesses because I have been a service contractor and they want me in for thought process and for systems and for just experience with that stuff. So at some point I may dig into some more things like that. But right now I probably have enough irons in the fire, at least on that end for the moment.
I think and I think the prison you could have a lot of fun with. Like you should name it like Justice Storage or something like that. You know, give it a prison theme. Like a single bay would be like solitary, and then if they get you could have a lot of fun with that. There's a prison in Boston that was remade into a luxury hotel called the Liberty Hotel. And like one of the restaurants is the Clink. You know, it's like they just did it all justice themed. So just an idea.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things with it. I think we're keeping the old prison name at this point. So we'll see. People are familiar with that.
I love it. All right, let's jump over and wrap this up with a question from the GoBundance card game. The question, 7 of diamonds, is what would you love to see our country start doing? Ooh, big question.
Whew. Man, that's a serious question.
Loaded. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one I've got to say after a whole podcast and talking is really looking for what the Lord wants in their life. So I think that can direct everything. If we had some more values as a country that were consistent, that we worked on, I think it would direct a lot more things that way. Right now, we're so divided politically and values-wise and generationally, and we don't have a common compass. So I think if our country had something that we were all pulling towards, that we were all shooting for, they talk about wars doing that, right? Bringing everybody together. And right now we're so divided. It just, with social media, you can't have a conversation with someone over Facebook, because if your political views are different, then you can be alienated and they can call you out in writing and they never have to face you, or they just, it's just weird. So I feel like that's a big way that our country could change. If we had common values and we could have conversations, it would be a game changer.
I agree completely. Yeah. Wow, I love that, man. That's a great answer to that question. I didn't know where that was going to go, so that's a great answer. Grant, anything we want to wrap up with? What do you think? Any high points for you, or questions, or anything you want to wrap with?
Yeah, one thing I want to know is, tell me about your lawn. Is it green and beautiful, or is it lush? You don't even have a sprinkler system.
Yeah, so my wife won't let me put one in our cottage.
I knew it. Okay.
We have to mow it too much, but my lawn is the best lawn in the neighborhood. We live out in the boonies. We're not in a neighborhood. And so if I wasn't in this business, it wouldn't be, but I designed a sprinkler system where we test every possible product or idea with it. So I have all the highest tech controller, even though I don't run it myself. My guys come and service it. And then I have one of the companies we work with handles everything. So it's who, not how.
Nice.
So I am not doing anything on my own lawn. I don't work on my own grass. I don't mow it. I don't fertilize it. I don't sprinkle it. I try and find the best people to take care of it. And I am connected with those people very well.
Nice. Great book too. Who, not how.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron, where can you direct people to either follow you, reach out, whatever it is you want to do? Company website, Instagram handle, anything that you want to drop so people can learn more about you.
Sure. Our website for Grapids is grapids.com. And if they want to connect with me, I'm on Facebook. That's an easy place. I feel like I'm old. I coach high school tennis and none of those boys use it. So it's like, man, I'm off the generational scope and not on the cutting edge anymore. But, and if they want to reach out to me personally, my email is aaron@grapids.com. AARON.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for being on. I appreciate you being here. This was fun. I mean, just a great story. I knew we were going to get a lot of great insight from you. So I appreciate you pouring your heart into this, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jamie.